All right, and welcome into the Fantasy Pros NFL Draft Show. The college football season has ended in spectacular fashion as the Ohio State Buckeyes were crowned national champions. We also have just 3 NFL games remaining, which means it's time to shift our focus to the NFL Draft. That starts today as we give you our top 10 prospects to watch at the Reese's Senior Bowl. That's when the NFL community boards these little tiny planes and they touch down in Mobile, Alabama for a week's worth of studying the seniors declaring for the NFL Draft. I am your host, Seth Woolcock, and while it's extremely bittersweet to close the book on a spectacular college football season, we're going to keep it rolling because that's what we do here at Fantasy Pros. And no, I'm not alone. I'm joined by one of the most electric voices in the fantasy football industry, a Southern gentleman with maybe perhaps the sickest beard in the business, Derek Brown, a.k.a. D-Bro. What's going on, brother? How are you feeling less than a week away from Senior Bowl practices kicking off?
Oh, man, this is one of my favorite times of the year, man. I love this time of year, getting back out of the NFL streets and back into the prospect stuff. I mean, I know that the only person that I could say, maybe 2 or 3 people that get into this stuff deeper than I do, one is our guest today who, don't want to jump the gun with, but I'm excited, Seth. I'm really excited because I've been wanting to kick this show off with you for the last few weeks and for everybody just to lay this out this year. We're going to bring on a litany of amazing guests every single show, going through quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, all the things for draft prospects. And Seth, I don't know if you want to do the honors or if you're going to turn this over to me, but I'm freaking jonesed that we got the man in the house that we did today to talk about all of these Senior Bowl guys, man.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the owner and COO of Fantasy Points, looking incredibly jacked today. Brett Whitefield.
Always.
Brett, thanks for joining us. Thanks for putting up with D-Bro one more time today.
Oh, heck yeah. I'm a little confused, though. I see the show sheet. We're talking draft. I thought we were doing top 5 metal bands of all time.
Well, no, that was the show before the show, Brett. That's the after party.
You got Bleh on your sweatshirt, D-Bro.
Yeah, baby. Come on. I don't know. Do we talk more music or do we talk prospects more, Brett, or just random BS? I don't know. It's a mix of all things in their texts.
It's probably like 60-40 football to metal.
You guys kind of look like metal band members, honestly, with the bald haircut and the beard. I think you'd fit right in.
Maybe I should pan out to my guitar that's hanging right on the wall behind me.
Same.
I've never heard of Bleh either. What is that, D-Bro?
Seth, I don't even know what to I don't even know what words to bring back to you on this, man. Like,
give me a time range. When were they popular?
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! No. Okay, so this is the call out of like basically most of your metal breakdowns. So after your second, third chorus, when it's time to get in the pit, baby, and throw down.
Okay.
That is the call to arms. Brett, am I wrong here?
You're not wrong, and it's not Bleh. It's more of a blah.
Okay, gotcha.
Let's go.
D-Bro, I kind of pegged you as a country guy. You live in Texas, so I kind of just like, okay, he's probably a country guy. We'd have something in common. Apparently not, though. So learning a lot about each other. And before we jump into the prospects, D-Bro, can you kind of let our listeners know a little bit more about an overview of what the Reese's Senior Bowl is for those of you who might be new to the event?
Yeah, man. So personally, been going to this for like the last, Brett? The last 3 or 4 seasons we've been in attendance here. Fantastic event run by Jim Nagy in Mobile, Alabama. Basically, this is your college all-star game. The invites are sent out to all these players across the spectrum, big schools, small schools, everywhere in between. And we all descend upon Mobile for a wonderful week and bring back both like our intel from practices, boots on the ground knowledge, because there are going to be head coaches, scouts, agents, everybody in Mobile for this entire week. And this happens every single year around this time. And it's wonderful, man. The context that we are able to come back away from after spending that week at Mobile, I think gives such insight to fantasy gamers, people that love NFL draft stuff and eat all of that up, as well as people playing in dynasty leagues, man. Like, there is stuff that you walk away from Mobile that, yeah, okay, if you're sitting on scrolling social media, reading articles, watching shows like this at home and stuff, you get the gist of it, man. But there is something different about being in Mobile that cannot be named unless you are there. I mean, am I wrong, Brett?
No, I don't think you're wrong. I mean, you can always access the practice tape afterwards, but I think there's something about feeling it in the moment. I think one of my favorite parts about Senior Bowl is like we have 4 years of college tape on most of these guys, but
Right.
depending on where they come from, sometimes they come from a weird scheme or
Mhm.
they're buried on a depth chart somewhere. You don't always know the totality of their skill set. And so we never throw out the 4 years of tape, but sometimes the Senior Bowl is a great opportunity to add to a story. The anecdote I always tell is Terry McLaurin. Coming from that Ohio State offense when he did, it was like, I think I'm not exaggerating, 85% or more of his touches were like screens and pop pass, jet sweep, end around, the occasional go ball. And we had never seen the dude run a route, let alone a route on press man coverage. And then he gets to the Senior Bowl week and absolutely dominates. He routed up every corner there. I don't think he lost a single rep in one-on-ones. It was unbelievable. And I've talked to Jim Nagy about this. Jim told me going into that week, Terry had like a 6th round draft valuation from scouts, and he ends up going in the 3rd round. I had a 2nd round grade on him, largely in part because of that week, and he's had a great career. So I think that's a great anecdote. We didn't throw out the 4 years of tape, but we were able to add to the story a little bit with his Senior Bowl performance.
Brett, to your point there, it's not every single year, but we do see guys that go there and just pop and catch steam and stuff. And to your point, when you bring up Terry, the guy that I go back and this was my first experience, the first year I went to Mobile, is watching Christian Watson, man. Like, I remember he got added to the roster a little bit later in the process, and I didn't even watch him going down there. And when we're in Mobile, I'm like, this dude's not losing any of his one-on-one reps coming from an FCS school. And I mean, we all saw like all of the steam that he got after Mobile, but even going into Mobile, you weren't hearing a lot of people out there talking about, oh, Christian Watson, 2nd round pick, flying up draft boards. But again, to your point, it's another great opportunity for players to not only show good parts of their game or what they excel at, but also show all of these teams and all these scouts and everybody the other parts of their game that like maybe haven't been highlighted for whatever reason through that week.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we jump in, I did want to shout out everyone who's tuning in both on the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel and the audio feed. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the audio feed because D-Bro is going to have some micro pods coming out next week with Boggs breaking down some winners and losers of each day of practice. Also here on YouTube, if you enjoy this type of content, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you are new. We've got NFL draft content coming for you all spring long, as D-Bro alluded to. But let's go ahead. Let's jump right into the prospects, starting with Derek's number 5 prospect to watch at the Senior Bowl, Iowa State wide receiver Jaylin Noel. It was a storybook season for the Cyclones this past year. They advanced all the way to the Big 12 championship game under the direction of QB Rocco Bech. Noel was really one of his go-to targets, 80 receptions, nearly 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, also a first-team All-Big 12 player as a returner. D-Bro, what are your early thoughts on this former 3-star recruit who will be 23 by the NFL season, and what are you looking to see from him in Mobile?
Man, I can't wait to see him in one-on-ones, and he's one of the guys, like, in this process of prepping to go to Mobile, watching all of these players that I can find all 22 on him, and he pops off the film for me, man. Like, watching not only the nuance that he adds to his routes, so, like, I want to see him in a one-on-one, and it's specifically because I look at his skill set, and I look at, okay, yes, he was primarily a slot wide receiver in college. I think the guy can play inside-outside. I think he can, like, look, if you wanted to make him just your pure slot receiver in the NFL, I think he could definitely do that. He's shown that. But I think there's route nuance. I think there's play strength. I've seen him, whether it's playing through contact on perimeter routes or dealing with physical corners and press man at the line. I think he can win in all different areas, and I want to see him go ball out in those one-on-one scenarios, man.
What do you think about him, Brett? Do you have any early notes on Noel?
Yeah, I like Noel a little bit. I actually like his teammate counterpart, Jaden Higgins, a little bit better.
Yep,
but he's not on the show to talk about today. But that's all right. Noel, he's a really fluid mover. If you like, I hate to invoke these names because it hasn't worked out great. But Wan'Dale Robinson, Elijah Moore, very similar role in college that those guys had, and so it gives me a little cause for concern. The production profile might be a little flimsy. Primarily playing against quarters coverage in the slot. He dominated safeties. One-on-one against safeties, he won those matchups all day, left and right. I do think that production profile is a little flimsy. However, when you just scout the traits and you're looking at the movement skills, the route running technique, the ability to break down, he's a very flawless mover. He's got a little Tez Johnson to his game, just really easy on his feet. I think all that translates well. Good yak guy as well. He's a guy, if he lands in the right situation, like a Houston or an LA Rams, where he's going to be the motion man in that offense, you can kind of hide him. away from press and get him clean releases off the line of scrimmage, I think he could be a nightmare.
Dude, I also like his downfield speed too, Brett. Like, you'll see him separate and running away from corners and getting deep. So I think there's another area of his game that can be unlocked in the NFL more.
We almost made Wan'Dale Robinson a thing this past year, D-Bro. We were this like it was a thing for a minute. I was riding him in a couple redrafts. I liked it. Yep. It was fun. Good times. Moving to Brett's number 5 prospect, it is Miami running back Damien Martinez. He was a huge part of Miami's return to national relevance this season, leading the team with over 1,000 yards, 8th in the ACC in rushing, 10 touchdowns after transferring from Oregon State. Still very much in a committee, though, with Mark Fletcher Jr. Brett, what is your initial feel for Martinez, and what are you hoping to learn from the Senior Bowl?
I'll say this running back class in general is just disgustingly loaded. Yeah. So it's hard to stand out despite that. And somehow Damien Martinez did for me when I watched his tape. This guy, if you like Trey Benson last year as a prospect, Martinez is a better version of him. And Trey Benson went in the second round. So Martinez is a big physical player. He's 6 foot, 235, 237, something like that. And he can flat out fly. He has movement skills akin to that of like a Steven Jackson, where he's got a jump cut in the open field that just doesn't make sense for a guy that's that size. I have 3 premium traits when I scout running backs: vision, burst, and ability to make guys miss. He does all 3 at a really high level. So I'm a big Martinez guy. My guy Theo Greminger actually put him on me. I kind of dabbled with some of his Oregon State tape with my summer scouting and just was like, it's okay. But the Miami tape this year was unbelievable.
D-Bro, what are your early thoughts on Martinez in what's a class, as Brett just alluded to, that's absolutely stacked, even with the likes of Kaytron Allen and Nicholas Singleton returning to Penn State?
Yeah, I think because of the depth of this running back class, he's probably going to, do you think this is wrong, Brett? Like, probably fall somewhere in that 3rd, 4th round gap of the NFL draft just because of the depth, unless some team like falls in love with him.
If a team feels about him the way I do, I think he could go day 2 for sure.
Okay.
Especially because I do think he'll blaze a 40. I think he'll run, easy in the 4.4s at 235 pounds, which is gross.
See, and I kind of put him in that 4-5 range. To me, the thing that stood out about his film to me was, dude, his tenacity and his leg drive and the way he finishes runs really stood out. Like, he is fighting for every single freaking blade of grass, and he'll carry dudes. So, that type of finishing power. And I don't want to say like this new version of the NFL, but I think we can say after this last NFL season, the run game's more in vogue now. You're seeing lighter defenses, faster defenses, and teams going back to saying, okay, we're going to play a little bit slower, and we're just going to run the freaking ball against you. And like this version of the NFL versus like 3-4 years ago, a player like Martinez, I kind of like him more than if you were to like go back in time a little bit and everybody's in 11 personnel. I like Martinez more now.
To that point, if you're going to sit back and play too high against that running back, good luck.
Yeah.
He's going to run.
He's going to gash you for 4 and 5 yards a carry. Easy.
Okay. Brett, where do you have him right now in your running back rankings? Is he somewhere between like RB4 and RB7 to you?
Yeah, he is. I admittedly haven't scored everyone yet. I kind of, one of my things is I watch literally every snap a guy's played. So I'm a little slow. I've got through 170 prospects, but I also do O-line, D-line. So I'm not all the way through the running backs. Wow. But I think he's likely to finish between 4 and 6 for me for sure.
Wow, I'm sure your family loves you this time of year, man, if you're going through the O-line and the defensive line prospects. That's respect right there to you. Before we continue, I did want to remind everyone, if you want a chance to win a signed TJ Hawkinson Vikings helmet for free, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com, all you need to do is head to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either A, download the Fantasy Pros My Playbook app, B, leave a review for this podcast, or C, follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more entries you will receive, and we'll be announcing a winner right here on the program. So if you're watching here on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when new episodes are up and to claim your prize. Shifting gears to D-Bro's number 4 prospect to watch, it's Utah State wide receiver Jalen Royals. Pretty mid-season for the Aggies overall, finishing 4-8 towards the bottom of the Mountain West Conference standing. However, Royals was really one of the true bright spots there, D-Bro, finishing with 55 receptions, over 800 yards, and 6 touchdowns. This guy is a big play waiting to happen. He finished first in the Mountain West and second in the country in 2023 with 15 receiving touchdowns. What are you currently seeing from the former JUCO transfer that we think maybe could transfer to the NFL level? And what are you excited to see him do at the Senior Bowl next week?
I mean, look, I want to see him, specifically his route running against better competition. I want to see what can he do off the line. I want to see the release package and stuff, because coming from Utah State, like, you're looking at a player, I mean, he is lightning in a bottle. You put the ball in his hands and it is immediate lightning, it is immediate burst and acceleration and rack for days. Like, he's running away from corners and he's getting the ball in his hands and just burning guys in the open field. So with all of that, and he's such a fluid mover too, man. Like, he makes everything and that type of speed look easy. So I want to see him, like, he's the guy that I'm really kind of like earmarking for this week of, okay, small school guy, can he come in and have a Christian Watson type of week? I don't know if he can, because again, I want to see the route running and to a higher level than what he put up on film last year. But if he can do that, he definitely could be a riser in this class.
Okay, Brett, how do you feel about Royals currently? And do you knock players that are coming from a G5 program like Utah State at all in your initial scouting?
So first and foremost, if I get a guy like that, I evaluate the tape for what it is. So
Okay.
I'm trait scouting. If he does the things I'm looking for, then that's great. I will knock his production profile. So I have a weighted system. I have 4 main buckets that are all weighted differently. There's a production bucket in there, which is more analytics heavy than I would say raw stats. But yeah, he gets dinged a little bit coming from a G5. So for Royals, though, this is a huge week for him. He faced like no good corners in college. His come-up story is kind of weird, too. He was at Georgia Military before he transferred to Utah State. So he went from small school, like really small school, to pretty small school. So it's kind of it's a weird come-up story. For me, on tape, I see a linear mover almost exclusively. He doesn't have a lot of wiggle and lateral ability, at least that I've seen on tape. So I'm really looking forward to the Senior Bowl, because it's like he's going to get in press man situations where he's going to have to win without just deploying lateral movement skills. So does he have good hand technique? Are feet and hips synced up? Like how does he get around press? We see the after the catch stuff. It pops on tape, but it's like, how much of that is influenced by the level of competition? How much is influenced by the fact that he's just, he gets fed all of these targets because, he plays for Utah State. So I'm looking forward to the Senior Bowl to kind of answer some of these questions.
Yeah, and to Brett, to your point, man, like, I think that these practices and because the other part about this is what skills are players able to highlight in this condensed format? Like your physical running backs, like we just talked about Damien Martinez. He's not going to be able to highlight that in these practice formats where they're not going full on tackling. But other players like Royals, we get in these one-on-one situations. Can you highlight the finer points of your game that maybe we didn't see before in this kind of like just this microcosm?
Love it. Love it. Next up is Brett's number 4 prospect, TCU wide receiver Savion Williams, who really is a true dual threat player, one of my favorite prospects in this class. Over 600 receiving yards on 60 catches this season. Also, over 300 rushing yards on 51 carries, combining for 12 total touchdowns. Brett, this guy is an absolute physical specimen, quite like yourself, 6'5", 212 pounds. What's your scouting report on him, and what could change for you based on his performance at the Senior Bowl?
Yes, it's funny. I actually got to Savion yesterday.
Okay.
I crammed through his entire tape and all yesterday. So I didn't know much about him. I knew that he popped when I was watching Jack Bech, who's also awesome. Another school with 2 studs. So, but Savion, man, I knew he was a specimen. I knew he's a Bruce Feldman freaks list guy. I think he squats 600 plus pounds, but at his frame, that's kind of ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I just fell in love with this dude. It was wild. It happened overnight. I think his production profile might be the biggest crime against humanity, and TCU's coaching staff needs to be investigated for this.
Yeah.
I don't know how a guy this talented has 600 receiving yards in a season. No, I know later in the year he ended up having to do a lot of like wildcat quarterback stuff.
Right.
And so I think he racked up 350 plus rushing yards or whatever, but it's still this is shameful that this guy only produced what he did, because the talent is insane. So anything, like, I put together a 20 play playlist where I can literally show you every single trait that you would want in a wide receiver, and he does it at 6'5", 230. The route running nuance, the ability to beat man and zone. He's got a really good feel for beating zone. He's insane after the catch, ridiculous body control, ball tracking skills for days, and then obviously he's a great athlete. There's not much more to want out of a receiver than what Savion Williams has. I need answers on what happened with the production.
Yeah.
I need to talk to a coach. I need something. Hopefully I run into a TCU coach while I'm down there, so I can just ask him what the hell's up. But
well, and the hype was crazy for him coming into the season. I remember that I think it was week 1, the game against Stanford on Friday night. I felt like I should be playing a drinking game every time they said the name Savion Williams, because it was every play they were mentioning, even when he was off the field. So D-Bro, any initial thoughts on Savion Williams? Because I feel like as a fantasy community, we get really excited about these players that can run the ball and catch the ball.
Yeah, I'll be honest with this. I'm wrapping up the last few players before we get down to Senior Bowl, so I'm early in Savion's tape. I just cracked him open this morning before we were prepping for this show and stuff. So I'm early in his tape. The thing I guess I'm going to toss this back to Brett here, because the thing early in his tape that I need you to reconcile this for me, Brett. How does Savion have a drop rate over 11% in 3 of his last 5 seasons? And I'm like, and you see some of the concentration stuff on film, and again, I'm early in it, but how does that player have that high of a drop rate, but also have a 75% contested catch rate in college? So I'm like, you're like, oh, well, looking at the numbers on paper, it's like, oh, well, his hands. Well, what about his hands?
yeah, so most of his drops are of the dumb variety, where it's like he's running before the ball gets there. It's not a technique issue.
Okay.
And you see when he's really focused on the catch point, it's his ball. Yeah, I also want to just throw out there, like, he was a quarterback recruit coming to TCU. He was listed on their roster as a quarterback for his first 2 seasons, and then transitioned to wide receiver. Obviously, he still does some of the QB stuff with the Wildcat, but I think that could have something to do with it too, right? So, like, he's new to the position. Sometimes catching the ball is harder than we like to think it is, especially when these guys can throw the ball hard. So, I mean, it's, it's not an excuse, but it is like, he's relatively new. I know Luke McCaffrey had drop issues his first year as a receiver too. So
also not the best quarterback play, I feel like, at TCU this past year.
Yep.
For sure.
There's a few different guys we could talk about bad quarterback play that we've already highlighted here.
Yes, certainly. And that's why the Senior Bowl is so much fun, I feel like, because we can kind of remove a little bit of those tertiary elements that we can't really control on a college football field and see them more kind of in a controlled environment here. So before we keep it moving, I did want to remind everyone to check out Reality Sports Online. You've probably already heard about them. They're the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL GM. But the question is here, have you tried it yet? It's time to go see what all the buzz is about in the Dynasty community. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, extensions, first-round rookie options. There's so much more you can check out on the Reality Sports Online platform. Think it sounds complicated. It's really not, and the best thing about it is that it really is taking no more time than a standard league. It just requires a little bit more strategy. So think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out the general manager skills for free at in a mock draft free agency auction. And if you like what you see, please use the promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Again, that's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. Ahead of this 9-4 season for the Horned Frogs, I think it's safe to say that Williams really was the wide receiver in this offense on everyone's Dynasty watch list. But Jack Bech kind of came out of nowhere and outdid him in the receiving department, taking 62 receptions for over 1,000 yards, 9 total touchdowns as well. He's listed at 6'2" and 215 pounds, so good-sized guy. D-Bro, what's your pulse on the former LSU transfer and Biletnikoff semifinalist heading to Mobile?
When I turned on his film, the first thing I texted Brett was, Jack Bech is a dog. He is an absolute freaking dog. Like, from down to down, tone-setting guy. You are getting 150% effort on every single snap, whether it is run blocking, whether it is all these different things. So, like, I want to see, obviously, I think he's going to bring that same type of energy. But for me, And you highlighted this, Seth, moving from LSU to TCU, and I think Brett is going to crush my soul here. I want to know, is Jack Bech going to work at tight end this week? I don't know if that happens, but looking at his movement skills, his play strength, he can fight through man press. I don't think he's the most fluid mover. He could beat zone. I worry about some of the downfield speed and things like that. I would love it if he moved back to tight end, because if you put his skill set and you looked at it through the lens of the tight end position, I would be over the moon right now. Like, I would be like, oh my God, like this dude can freaking play. He can be a matchup nightmare for an NFL offense. I don't know if he works at tight end this week, but Brett, what do you think about him?
He's a wide receiver.
Okay. I mean, I don't disagree that a dude could play wide receiver.
Yeah, I look at guys recently at the Senior Bowl. Elijah Higgins was one of them. And then Johnny
We
Wilson.
all talked about Johnny Wilson last year. That was interesting.
These guys turn like they're like semi trucks, impossible to stop. Like, and I don't mean that in a good way. Jack Bech has got really good movement skills in comparison to those guys. Yep. So yeah, he's like a power forward at slot receiver. I think he can play on the outside too in a traditional X role. I got a landing spot for you. Chicago Bears, Ben Johnson.
Oh, let's go.
New thing about culture, tone setting. They've already got skill with DJ Moore and Roma Dunes. Just go ahead and keep the culture guy there. And Jack Bech, it's not going to cost a huge investment. Ben needs to get some culture guys going. You know, the run blocking stands out. The tough yards over the middle of the field. He's not quite Amon-Ra. Like he's different than Amon-Ra, but that role.
I was going to say that name too.
Yeah, that role is so valuable in the Ben's, Dan Campbell offense. I think it's a match made in heaven.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Brett. Like, as you're rolling out Ben Johnson, I'm like, I could definitely see Bech fitting that and putting him, like, if you wanted to run 21 personnel, you're putting him in the backfield with DeAndre Swift and stuff and running him, give him routes out of the backfield too.
Yeah.
Do you guys knock someone like Bech who only has like really 1 year of production at the collegiate level? Like, I know a lot of people kind of made that argument against someone like Brian Thomas Jr. and then he lights the world on fire in his rookie season. So, D-Bro, does that bother you at all or not really?
Not really. I mean, I think, and I think Brett's going to back this up too. I think the film tells you everything you need to know. Like, is the guy real? Is he not? I mean, we hear this with numerous quarterbacks, running backs, like every single year. I feel like that's the easy, low-hanging fruit that a lot of people try to ding certain players with.
Right.
When it really comes down to, can you play or can you not? And the film is going to tell us. I mean, Brett, do you disagree with me?
No, personally, I don't, which is funny because I own an analytics company. But
yeah, I mean, but even the muddiness of that with NIL and everything nowadays, so like the analytical markers, we used to be like, oh, the breakout age of guys. Like, you can't even lean on that nowadays.
Yeah, Bech isn't going to score well in a lot of people's models, right? But and I do think there's some red flag stuff that you can apply with the analytics. If there's answers for or reasonable explanations, I'm okay with it. You mentioned Brian Thomas Jr. He was a top 13 player in the class for me last year. I did not give a crap that it was 1 year. It did not bother me at all. So,
okay. Great. Yep. Well, great to know. For Brett at number 3, it's Syracuse running back LeQuint Allen. It was a strong season for the Orange under Fran Brown. They finished 10-3 with Kyle McCord under center. Allen finishes with back-to-back 1,000 yards rushing and scored 30 combined touchdowns in that span. But the real boost this season came in the receiving game where he had over 64 receptions, over 500 yards. Brett, I'm a huge fan of Allen, specifically after he put the team on his back in that 4-touchdown overtime win against UNLV. Cash me that underdog ticket there on Friday night in Las Vegas. Do you like Allen as well, and what could we learn about him in the next week?
Yeah, I really like Allen. And again, this is a crowded running back class, and I don't know where he fits right now.
Right.
But you want to talk about a bell cow, a guy who can handle every single down for a team? It's LeQuint Allen. This guy, there isn't a more accomplished pass catcher as a running back in this class. I mean, he's awesome. Mm-hmm. And then to boot, he's got great vision. His burst is okay. He's got decent get off, but his long speed, he's a really long strider, really high cut athlete. I got a comp for you I'll throw out. Kerryon Johnson. I know Kerryon.
Oh, baby. I'm an old school Kerryon lover.
The injuries sucked the whole out of his body, unfortunately.
Yep.
But man, I think this is carry on 2.0, and I'm here for it, man. I like this guy. I think if you want a little discount in the draft at a running back, late third, early fourth round, this guy, this is like a Bucky Irving type value to me.
That comp makes my heart happy, Brett.
D-Bro, how do you feel about a guy like Allen, who obviously can play 3 downs in the NFL, but at the same time has a lot of miles on these tires right now?
I mean, I think like all the other skills, I think that staying healthy, and I don't worry about collegiate volume piling up, because I mean, really, if we want to break down the volume, and I think people kind of overrate that and talk about it, like I think it's a talking point, but I don't think it's a talking point that has a lot of substance behind it, because if we want to get real about this, all of these players that go to the NFL and they get to this point of being prospects, they've been ridden by coaches and teams and offenses and defenses since they were in freaking Pop Warner, dude. So like,
look at Derrick Henry's
all
high
of that
school
volume,
stats.
like it comes down to, can their bodies hold up? Can your body hold up? What are you doing, both conditioning and preparation and things like that, to take care of yourself? But do I look at any players and ever, like, considering all the things are off the table, like clean injury histories, do I worry about players that have racked up a ton of volume in college and projecting them to the NFL? No, I don't worry about it.
Okay, well, good to know. Before we keep it moving, I did want to remind everyone real quick to join our Fantasy Pros Discord community. You can chat with other fans and get access to exclusive AMAs that wind up on our podcast feed. Come get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat. In a tight end class dominated by the names like Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland, D-Bro's number 2 prospect to watch at the Senior Bowl is Texas's Gunnar Helm. Texas made a run all the way to the CFP semifinals. Helm was a huge part of that. Actually led the team with 60 receptions that he took for over 750 yards, 7 touchdowns in his first season as the tight end 1 following the departure of Jatavion Sanders. A semifinalist for the John Mackey Award for the best tight end in the country. Helm's a big son of a gun, D-Bro. 6'5", 231 pounds. What's your initial feelings on him, and what are you going to be paying attention to him next week?
I want to see him ball out in one-on-ones. I want to see him matched up against linebackers. And the big thing that Brett's talking about, the due diligence, and you want to sit a coaching staff down with TCU and ask, why did these things not happen? I want to go talk to the coaches at Texas and saying, you have a guy like Gunnar Helm who showed you that he has a my ball mentality. When he gets above the rim, he is coming down with those 50-50 balls. Why did you not utilize, and this is why I specifically want to see him in those tight end drills when we have guys running one-on-ones in the red zone. Why did you not use Gunnar Helm in the red zone more and give your quarterbacks easier opportunities for touchdowns and scores than you did? Because I love the guy, man. Like, I think he's an underrated athlete. I think his foot speed's underrated. Again, I point back to the above the rim stuff, but he uncovers quickly, and I think that we could see more upside for him in the NFL than we saw at the collegiate level with only 1 year as a starter at Texas.
Brett, where does Helm fit in for you right now, and what are you looking for at the Senior Bowl next week?
Yeah, day 2 guy for me for sure. Great tight end class as well as running back class.
Yeah,
I think he's one of the best yak players in the draft. I mean, he's a monster after the catch. I actually, about a year ago, when I was doing Adonai Mitchell and Xavier Worthy's tape and Jatavion Sanders, I was texting Scott Barrett, like, a year from now, we're going to be talking about Gunnar Helm as being a dude. And he's a dude. He's a straight dog.
He is a dude.
To answer your question about the red zone stuff, the answer's simple. Steve Sarkisian wanted to make sure Gunnar Helm made it to the NFL, and hospital ball Ewers would not have allowed it to happen. Targeting him in the red zone.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
I texted you last year when I was watching Worthy and Adonai Mitchell tape, and I was like, Quinn Ewers is not it, man. And I still stand by that.
Yeah, lollipop over the middle. Gunnar Helm gets decapitated. All right, cool. That wouldn't have worked too well. So I'm glad they didn't do that. I'm glad we get to watch him next week. I agree, though, Debo. One-on-ones are going to be big for him. I think he didn't put a ton of route running on tape. Not his fault. It's just the nature of kind of what they asked the tight end to do at Texas. When he is running downfield, it's usually stretching the seam, which he's very good at, by the way.
Okay.
And so, I think if he goes and puts on a route running clinic or even looks the part, I think this is an easy day 2 pick. Probably early round 2 pick, actually.
Dude, I mean, like, seriously, like, if he goes down there and has, like, a Theo Johnson type of week and he puts on a show, like, I mean, what do you think, Brett? 4.6 speed? Maybe he trains up and I don't think he runs a 4.5, but 4.6?
I think he's a little faster than that.
Wow. You think he's 4.5?
He gets on top of safeties pretty quick.
I that's why I'm asking. Like, I think he's in that realm of, like, maybe high 4.5s. He's definitely 4.6, no doubt.
Yeah, I think he's in the 4.5s when it's all set. It depends how much weight he adds, actually, because I know Texas listed him at 231. He looks heavier than that to me.
He looks heavier than that. Like, I thought he was playing in the mid or high 240s, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm assuming he'll probably weigh at least 240 in Mobile. We'll see.
Cool. Helm's a really interesting prospect from a fantasy lens just because these are traditionally the tight ends you want to go after, right, D-Bro? Everyone's going to want Tyler Warren probably back end of the first round of Superflex drafts. Colston Loveland probably maybe early second round pick in those Superflex formats, but Helm's someone who you can probably get later in the draft if he doesn't blow up and have like the greatest relative athletic score ever, like Theo Johnson. Even Theo Johnson was still, going in the 4th round of most dynasty rookies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really good, and we have, we're going to have future episodes talking specifically about the tight end position and what a great class. But I think, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, Seth. Like, when you get to some of these deeper guys, again, like last year's class, unfortunately wasn't able to stay healthy, like Eric Alls of the world and players like that. Like, can they pop? What can they do with opportunities? But Helm is a guy that people need to be earmarking, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Brett's number 2 prospect to watch at the Senior Bowl, it's Ole Miss quarterback Jaxson Dart. This is a dude who was on many Heisman hopeful lists coming into the season and has since kind of been buried on the internet for shedding some tears after one of Ole Miss's 3 losses this season. Still, Dart was extremely efficient this season, led the SEC in completion percentage, led the SEC as well in passing yards, and 29 touchdowns, just 6 interceptions thrown to Trey Harris and company. Brett, it doesn't get much polarizing than Dart, but this is someone who also rushed for over 1,500 yards in his 3 seasons at Ole Miss after transferring from USC. What's your opinion on him, and could it change at all after this next week?
Yeah, Dart is my QB2 in this class. I'm a huge Jaxson Dart guy. So let me start here. I'm very critical when it comes to QBs. I spend most time on my show talking QB play. It's one of the things I love evaluating the most. And there are these QB-centric traits that I look for. Ability to move in the pocket, ability to reset the line of scrimmage, ability to get to the right play pre-snap, get to the right protection, get to the right play, or get to the right read post-snap. And Jaxson Dart does all of that at a relatively high level. I know the offense he's coming from it's not super complicated post-snap. It doesn't matter for me. He gets to the right throw usually. He has a really good arm too. Really good arm. He dominates the intermediate and deep part of the field outside the numbers. He can attack at all 3 levels. Like, the downfield accuracy is pretty uncanny. Actually, if you liked Jaden Daniels' skill set last year, Jaxson Dart is very much in the Jaden Daniels skill set camp. Now, obviously, Dart's not quite the runner Jaden Daniels is. But as far as downfield passing, downfield accuracy, back foot, let it rip kind of throws, I mean, he's that guy. And then he does have enough juice, though, to create beyond, the structure of the play. He's got enough juice to go pick up first downs with his leg. You might scheme a couple runs up for him per game. Not a Konami code type quarterback necessarily, but a guy who can definitely get it done with his legs when needed. I think he's a really good quarterback. And I also like the swag factor with him. He just has that kind of it vibe. Yeah. He thinks he's the dude. And I think that's important at quarterback. Despite the tearful game, I know you got clowned for that. Caleb Williams did the same thing.
Yeah, true.
And for whatever reason, we weren't allowed to clown Caleb for that, so I'm not going to clown Dart for that then.
I'm not going to clown anybody for it. Play with your emotions, man. Wear your heart on your sleeve. I'm down for it.
Yeah. So also, I just to not dump out all the steam I just dropped. This is a rough quarterback class. I'll just be So when I say he's my QB2, we're from a valuation standpoint, we're talking about where I had Bo Nix last year. Now I know I liked Bo a lot more than Derek did, but I had Bo was a top 20-ish player for me. So like, when you're a quarterback and you play that valuable position, I'm okay with a top I might have the 20th highest grade on Dart. I'm okay with him going, anywhere after pick 5 probably. Like that's is he a top 5 pick to me? No, I wouldn't do that. But if you need a quarterback, you're in that top 20, go ahead and grab him. I think it'd be a great value for you.
Yep.
Bro, when down in Mobile, what are the different drills specifically that you're weighing in your quarterback ranking process? Because it was a couple years ago, I think it was Jake Haener that tore up the Senior Bowl and hasn't really translated to the next level. So what are the things that us fantasy managers should really be paying attention to from the Senior Bowl at the quarterback position specifically?
None of it.
I was gonna say, I was like, it's really hard. Like, to Brett's point, it is hard to get. And it is hard to get a lot out of the quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl, considering they have a short window, a short week, and what they're able to do. I mean, to the unfortunate fact of it is that you see a lot of quarterbacks that go to Mobile, and I'm not going to say it's all weather related. It has been really cold. It's been rainy in previous years.
Right.
We've had rough conditions. We haven't had the best quarterbacks at times in Mobile, but you have seen over the years where a lot of these guys are playing safe, or they're unwilling, and whether that's not knowing the plays or having a condensed format like this or rapport with these receiving weapons, it's tough on the quarterbacks. The big thing for me, that if I want to see anything out of these quarterbacks, I want to see you grip it, rip it, and do it with I'm not saying authority, but have conviction in what you're doing in the ball placement. I think that's the best thing we could probably take away from quarterbacks in Mobile.
Okay.
The last thing I want to see you do is to pull a Desmond Ridder of a few years ago and take off running when we're not even tackling in the drills. That's the last thing. Whenever you're taking off running out of your 14 reps and 9 of them is you scrambling because you can't get through your reads, you didn't do this, you can't throw an accurate ball in Mobile, that's where I think you see more red flags than seeing telling tale signs of it. But Brett, I mean, anything to add there, or am I wrong?
Yeah, no, you're spot on. So some more on why this week is tough. So these guys show up, completely new nomenclature, completely new terminology from a playbook, whole new set of wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs they have to throw to. There's no timing, there's no rhythm. Like Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. stunk the joint up.
They were terrible,
and they still went 8th and 12th overall. So it doesn't matter. It's, for me, I'm looking at how these guys manage stress. So on top of everything I just said, because they play quarterback too, everyone wants a piece of their time. It's like, oh, come do this appearance, come do this signing, come do this interview. It's a mess for these guys.
Brett, do you remember how wonderful Sam Howell was at the podium when we were in Mobile, and he was so ready to answer no questions,
dude. Exactly. Like so for me, I'm watching how these guys manage stress.
Okay.
You know, are they keeping the vibes high? I know that's a stupid word to use. I'm sorry I said that.
I say that word all the time, Brett. So don't feel stupid.
It's worse for you
stupid.
and me.
Seth
can get away with that because he's younger.
Right.
You and me, it's more forced.
26.
Yeah, exactly. I got 11 years on you. I shouldn't be singing vibes. So I like to see if they can keep the energy.
She didn't
high.
say aura. That's good.
God, I would have ejected myself from the studio. Had I said aura. So
good.
But yeah,
oh
I mean,
my God.
it's a stressful week. So I like to casually run into these guys and see how they're doing, check in, see what it's like, see where their mental's at. But other than that, during practice, like Derek said, we're gonna see. I pray to God we don't see Jalen Milroe scrambling on every single 7-on-7 drop back we get because it happens. Unfortunately, it's really hard for a QB to steal the show at this event. I go back to Josh Allen did it, Justin Herbert did it, but those guys are freaking Josh Allen and Justin Herbert. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's more telling, and not only who are we talking about from the quarterback position for this show, and I'll say it without saying it, I think it's more telling on this show that we are not bringing up Jalen Milroe as well.
Yeah. I just did my first mock draft of the season out there on FantasyPros.com right now. I have Milroe going, the Titans actually trading out of that first pick to the Raiders and then trading back into the first round to get Milroe at 32 overall. So maybe that's a little expensive, but I think someone's going to fall in love with the trades, right? I mean, he was unstoppable against SEC opponents on the ground like Georgia and LSU. He could not be stopped in those games, Brett.
I thought we were talking about a quarterback.
No. I will say, Seth, we'll get to this when we get to the quarterback episode. Yeah. I'm already going to be a professed Jalen Milroe hater probably out there in consensus. That is probably going to happen. No doubt.
Seth, to your point, though, just all cards on the table. I'm not going to be a Miller guy either, but when you see the Jalen Hurts development plan and where he's come from.
Yeah.
And where he went in the draft. I think that's a reasonable range for him, 32 to 50, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I would do it. I think a team will do it though, and who knows? He might have success if you can teach him how to throw. He is a quarterback after all. I mean, I guess.
It seems like an important skill that you can't answer every single equation at football with your legs, right, Brett? Playing quarterback.
True.
I think I was even higher on him before that Michigan loss in the bowl game where he just couldn't hang on to the ball. They did get some like torrential downpour, but I was betting on Bama heavy that day, and it really bit me in the butt. So I lost a little bit of my Milroe faith in there. But D-Bro, maybe we can have some guests on later this offseason to pump him up a little bit for us.
I'll try to unearth one for you, Seth.
Okay, all right, I like that. Rounding out D-Bro's top prospects to watch in Mobile, at number 1 is Kansas Jayhawks running back Devin Neal. Many were pretty surprised, I think, last year when Neal returned to Kansas for his senior year. And while it wasn't the senior year I think he was expecting for a top 25 preseason ranked team, finishing 5-7 towards the bottom of the Big 12 Conference, Neal had almost identical numbers from his junior season, rushed for over 1,200 yards, 16 touchdowns, adding over 250 yards through the air as a receiver. D-Bro, what can you tell us about this hometown kid who was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school in Lawrence, Kansas?
Dude, his feet are freaking awesome. I love watching his tape. I had a hard time. It is rare when I have a hard time watching these guys and coming up with a comp. I couldn't think of anybody off the top of my head. I went through like even size, things like that, where I'm like, who compares to this guy? Like I just put him like in my write-up that'll be live possibly when you're watching this. I just comped him to Nightcrawler. Dude just teleports and he saves the day. Like I watch his tape, and the big thing I want to see from him in Mobile is, and something I don't think we saw enough of in college as well, I want to see what he can do with those quick feet in the one-on-ones and the route running specifically, and in the passing drills. Like, I look at his game and I'm like, why were you not an angle route demon in college? Like, why were you not deployed in this way? Like, I think he has more upside as a playmaker, but also in 2024, I want to see him in pass pro snaps in Mobile, because I think he took a step forward in that. You saw he was able to better deal with incoming rushers. His anchor was better. I think he still has something to be desired, and this all kind of goes back to his rushing ability too, with leg drive and strength and stuff like that. But I want to see him in those one-on-one drills, both as a route runner and as a pass protector.
Mm-hmm. Brett, do you think the impact of Andy Kotelnicki, the offensive coordinator, going up to Penn State, impacted Neal in this offense as a whole that was pretty stagnant to begin the season before that like late season pop where they were just taking down all the undefeated teams?
I mean, I guess the fruit speaks for itself. They were a preseason top 25 team. Expectations were through the roof, and then they fell flat on their face early in the year. So, yeah, I think that for sure was a thing. I like Neal a good bit, actually. Derek, what do you think of like a thicker Tajay Spears?
I like that, dude. You know what? And this is shout out to your show with Joe Marino and First Read. Something that and looking at, because when we're talking about these prospects, I like that comp, first of all. But the other thing is, not only what are these players like, how is their game composed right now, but what can their game be in a year or two when you get him into an NFL strength program? A point that you and Joe made specifically about a player, and I'm curious your thoughts on him, Brett. Could we see Devin Neal take the next step a year or two into his NFL career, kind of like James Cook did this year from a rushing standpoint? Like, you saw James Cook, like, his game took another step forward in both finishing runs and the power and his ability with his leg drive, where it's like, if Neal could add that to the end of his runs or have that accentuate his tackle breaking ability just a little bit, I think we see another iteration of his game take off and more upside in the NFL. But am I off base with that, Brett?
No, I mean, typically running backs are a little bit more finished of a product than any other position. They're typically ready to go day one. However, I mean, the James Cook, that's not a bad comp in itself, actually. He's also thicker than James Cook, but I see some similarities there. I will say this, with Devin Neal, the buzz on him after Senior Bowl week is going to be insane. He's the
Oh, dude.
prototype running back that dominates these weeks because he's great as a pass catcher and he's great in pass pro. He's
One whip route. That's all we're gonna need.
I can already see Derek tweeting out right now. I can already see Derek getting the thumbs ready.
To Brett's point, though, that's what happened with Tajay Spears. He juked a dude on a whip route into another dimension, and then everybody's like, "Oh, Tajay!" So I could see it.
Give him a whip route or give him a halfback choice route. I mean, he's going to dominate. So at the end of Senior Bowl practices, they always line guys up for that last one-on-one. I could see them grabbing a corner and then grabbing Neal and letting Neal just go at it against a corner downfield. We saw this a couple.
Marshawn Lloyd last year.
Yeah, Marshawn Lloyd was beating corners.
Wow.
Whooped the dude in wheel route down the sideline.
Yep. It's where Derek first fell in love with him.
I'm still in love, baby. We just sometimes you get bit by the injury bug.
Yeah.
Lloyd's coming for people in year 2, baby. I'm here for it.
All right. Well, let's go ahead. Let's round out the program with a guy that I'm so happy we get to discuss. Stanford wide receiver Elic Ayomanor. He is Brett's #1 prospect to watch at the Senior Bowl. It was another putrid 3-9 season for the Cardinal, highlighted by inconsistent quarterback play from Ashton Daniels, among others. But for anyone who watched any Stanford games this season, they could tell Ayomanor was clearly the best player on this team. He did regress some from last season in categories like yards per reception, but still had back-to-back seasons of 62-plus receptions, 6 touchdowns. Brett, what range do you have Ayomanor going in the draft, and could a good performance at the Senior Bowl change anything for him?
I don't think he even needs a Senior Bowl, so I'll just state that.
Okay.
I'm going to plant my flag. I've done it all week. This is probably like my 5th show planting my flag on Ayomanor.
Ready for it.
I don't see a world where this guy's not a first-round draft pick.
Oh,
I don't see a world where the NFL lets him get past, say, pick 20. This dude is a stud.
All right, let's go, baby.
Wide receiver group that's dying for a number 2. We have Tet McMillan and then nothing. I don't think Luther Burden's very good.
I like Ibuka, but that's a different conversation, maybe.
Sure, I'm not taking Rashee Rice in the first round, though. That's more of a second-round kind of player.
Yeah. Okay.
No, that wasn't shade. I think what Ibuka does.
No, he's just being real.
Yeah, I think what Ibuka does is valuable. I think that's more of a second-round profile, personally.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like Luther Burden. I think Isaiah Bond's a little overrated.
Agreed.
So Ayomanor is destined to be the guy that rises, and he does everything you could possibly want as a wide receiver. The refinement and technique, it parallels no one in this class. I mean, he is truly an exceptional route runner. Tyler Osborne, Stanford's wide receiver coach, is phenomenal. One of the best in the country. He gets these guys ready. If you liked Michael Wilson at all, and some people didn't,
yeah,
Ayomanor is a souped-up super soldier serum version of him. Similar size, similar body composition, similar in the way that they approach the position, except Ayomanor is probably like a 30% better athlete than Wilson. So I'm super excited about Ayomanor. It's rare you get to watch a first-round caliber wide receiver down in Mobile. Typically, those guys are underclassmen. He's going to go down there and absolutely annihilate every corner he lines up against.
Okay. Derek, any thoughts for you here on the Stanford wide receiver?
It's funny because I always love when Brett and I talk prospects either on the phone or through text and stuff like that. And it's rare. When we come down with the same comp, that's exactly who I had Compton to, was Michael Wilson. And for all the reasons that like Brett highlighted here, his route running nuance. And I think one of the big things that jumped out off the film for me is his ability with his footwork in a phone booth. And it's specifically when you see guys sink their hips and gear down on those comebacks and the curls, and how he's able to get both, not only he can get early separation off the line, but gaining late separation. I mean, dude, that's one of the things that just makes you such a wonderful target to NFL quarterbacks.
His I would say highlight reel of beating press too. There's no one in the class that's beat press at a higher level. He's got multiple, releases. His release package is really good, but also
it's good.
Multiple stack and kind of throw by techniques. So like he can get in a player's blind spot really easily. He's got a bunch of techniques to break out of that, keeps guys guessing. He'll do something in the first quarter to set up a move in the fourth quarter. Like he is next level when it comes to route running. So, and then not to mention he's big. He's wants all the smoke all the time. He's awesome in the run game. He's awesome competitor, awesome at the catch point, ball tracking, body control, literally anything you can want out of a player. He's got it. So
I was expecting you to come in and say he was a second round prospect, no doubt, Brett. The first round stuff is definitely notable, man. But dude, you are one of the best wide receiver evaluators out there, and I don't say that lightly. I think your track record proves it, as well as, we're going to give a little bit of foreshadowing. Got to get you back on here for the wide receiver episode, my guy.
All right, let's do it.
Well, Brett, thanks so much for joining us today on the program. Tell our listeners how they can best support you and everything you have going on here throughout the NFL draft season here in 2025.
Yeah, 3 ways you can support me. On X, give me a follow at BG Whitefield, of course. Data.fantasypoints.com. This is my baby. I didn't program it all because I'm not a coder, but the whole data project at Fantasy Points, that is my baby. So if you're into data analytics, if you're a PFF fan, you will love what we do. Go check it out. And then lastly, First Read podcast, NFL First Read on Spotify, Apple, Google Play, whatever you listen to your podcast, find it. It's myself and Joe Marino. It's not necessarily it's not a fantasy driven show by any means, but we talk ball at I would say a pretty high level, getting some really in-depth conversations. I think it's a great pod. I might be a little biased, but go check that out. Subscribe to that, follow it, whatever you got to do.
I'll keep just heaping praise on Brett. I think he's one of the most underrated talent evaluators in the space. Dude should be on everybody's TV. So I agree with everything he just said. And dude. If you liked all the stuff from the primer every single year, a lot of that is Fantasy Points data. Best data in the business, baby.
Love it. Love it. D-Bro, first stop when you get to Alabama, where are we going? What's the one spot if no one's ever been to Mobile? Like, whether it's a dive bar, a restaurant, like, where are we going here? Where are we greasing up those NFL execs?
I could sit here and name all these great restaurants and places to eat and stuff like that. I think the number one place that everybody's going to go to, and it gets talked about, and it's my hole in the wall. It's everybody's hole in the wall, and that's Veets. You're going to go to a hole in the wall bar and sit there and talk to coaches at 2 a.m. in the morning. Why not? Brett's shaking his head already. No, I knew I was going to get hate for it.
Veets used to be really, really cool when I started going to the Senior Bowl. Yeah. The problem is it's such a spectacle now. Like every member, every guy with like 100 listeners to his podcast comes to Mobile, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. But because of that, you're getting less and less exposure to the teams as it goes. It's okay, but like just 3 years ago, Derek, like I sat there and had a conversation with Ben Johnson and Mark Brunell for about an hour. We walked out of the bar and Derek was like, "Who are you just talking to?" I was like, "Ben Johnson and Mark Brunell." He's like, "What?" Like,
well, you were talking to them. I was taking shots with Deuce Staley at the bar. So
Deuce. Wow. Okay.
He was in the same chair for 6 hours. Didn't leave till 4.
I think he literally rolled out of Veets and goes to practice, and then you'd see him right back at Veets.
Well, gentlemen, keep your head on a swivel down there in Alabama. We can't thank you enough for joining us today. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching this episode as well. That's going to do it for us today on the Fantasy Pros NFL Draft Show. Again, please like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel and the podcast feed. Plus, make sure you're following Brett and D-Bro on Twitter for updates from the Senior Bowl. For D-Bro and Brett, I'm Seth Woolcock. Take care, y'all.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast. If you love the show, the best free way to support us is by leaving a positive review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Follow us on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Fantasy Pros, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/fantasypros.